was Stormboy's Pelican. There's a lot of risks when it comes to remaking a classic film for the present day. That's because most remakes are a product of their time and were created under circumstances that really did contribute to their overall quality. So, with Stormboy, when I first heard about it, I was not optimistic to say the least. I saw the original as a kid on a school excursion and I loved it. So to see something like that bastardized, I was expecting the worst. But thankfully I didn't get that, instead I got a really good movie! Now the new Stormboy is what the ideal remake should be. It should tell the original story again, but tell it differently, because if a remake doesn't do that, then why actually remake the original to begin with? But with that being said, this does lead into my first main criticism of the film, its framing device. See, instead of it just being the story of the Stormboy, it instead is now the Stormboy as an old man telling his granddaughter about when he adopted the orphan pelicans. And the scenes that take place in the present day, they are completely useless. They don't contribute any new dimensions or developments to the original story whatsoever. In fact, it's actually the least interesting parts of the film. Hell, like, when the movie ends, it doesn't even give us a full resolution for the conflict that leads to him telling his granddaughter the story. It's as if the filmmakers realized that people weren't going to see this movie to see an old man talk about his pet pelican, they were going to see Stormboy. But for what it's worth, the actual Stormboy story, oh man, is it well done. Now originally Stormboy was the story about a young boy whose father has isolated him and himself, following on from a family tragedy. And while that is still the case here, it's not exactly the way it was as before. The dad hasn't completely isolated them from the rest of society. Instead, he's just living out alone in an isolated area, which does kind of defeat some of the drama of the story compared to the source material, but it still works. It's just a shame in the process of making this change, they made the dad more of a two-dimensional and flat character who doesn't really undergo any real development. The Stormboy, on the other hand, though, he does go through some development once again, and the bond he develops with the pelicans he adopts, oh man, like, it is an emotional roller coaster, and it's just a joy to see the pelicans grow up. In fact, the scene where Mr. Percival dies, that is still a tear-jerking moment, and I'm not lying, I actually nearly cried in the cinema. I was holding back the tears. But, emotional gut punches aside, the movie is also fun, and it has plenty of lighthearted moments to balance out the darker elements, so if you're a parent, you shouldn't be too concerned about that. And the character Fingerbone, okay, he's a bit more charming and lighthearted and a little less spiritual now, but while this isn't a bad thing, it does lead into another issue this remake has over the original. Aboriginal spirituality has been downplayed, which is a shame. It's still there, but it's more of a throwaway than anything central to the narrative, which is a shame. However, a bigger issue the movie has is how at times it feels like it's trying to push an environmentalism message onto the audience, and it does it with absolute ham-fistedness. I can't fault the director or the writer for wanting to include new themes into the story, but I just wish they could have done it more subtly or more cleverly. But at the very least, the movie knows when to back off with the messaging, and instead just refocuses on the character-driven drama from the original story, so it's not all bad. It's not like it's straight out of the 90s in all the worst ways. Suffice to say this movie was never going to live up to the standards of the original, but it didn't need to. The original is a classic that's perfectly fine the way it is. And this movie, it's perfectly fine as well. It's good on its own merits. And that's all it really needed to be. It's serious and mature enough for adults to appreciate what's going on with the characters, yet at the same time, it's light-hearted and cheerful enough for kids to enjoy as well, without talking down to them. Like I said before, the scene with Mr. Percival dying, I nearly cried over that scene. Stormboy is worth watching. Hey, thanks for checking out this video, I really do appreciate it, and if you really liked it, then by all means, feel free to also subscribe. Now for the next movie review, I'm going to be taking a look at the long overdue conclusion to M. Night Shyamalan's movie trilogy that began with Unbreakable, Glass. And for game reviews this month, I've got a review of Resident Evil 2's remake in the works, and I've also got a first impressions on Victor Vran and Apex Legends that'll be coming out in the near future as well. I've got all that and more coming up, so like usual, stick around.